So it's a very quick look at the program before we get going. If you head over to the EAMS website program link there, you can get an overview of activities for this week. So it's a mixture of talks and workshops and free chat sessions. So please do head over, click on the links to find more information. And this morning, we're delighted to welcome Blaženka Divjak, who is going to be giving us a keynote talk, possibly answering the question, how can learning design and learning analytics support validity of e-assessment in mathematics? So I'm going to hand over to Blaženka now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you all for giving me opportunity to have this first presentation today. And I'm really excited about it. And let me first share the screen and then we can start properly. Okay, I hope that you can see my screen. And actually what I'm trying to answer, or at least ask some additional questions, how can learning design and learning analytics support the validity of e-assessment in mathematics? And I think that it is important to do so, because what we have right now that I've been in teaching mathematics for quite a long time, more than 30 years, starting my career as a secondary school teacher. And then after that, after my PhD, I've been working in higher education, but also I took other responsibilities besides just research and teaching. And then it was always a question how we can be sure that we are good, actually doing the right in the right way, and also that we are what we are doing is relevant to our students. So first of all, many aspects during this more than 30 years I've been in this business of our work have been changed, even though we haven't changed our jobs. For example, if we are looking at a university teacher job, then probably the title and the description is the same, but actually the substance and way how we are doing things have been changed dramatically. But usually around classroom settings, administration, teaching equipment, students' pre-knowledge also have been changed, I would say, and their motivation, the technology we use, and so on. But assessment has, in my opinion, changed the least, at least until the pandemic. So at the same time, we are aware that assessment is a very powerful tool that can activate a deeper student's approach to learning. So maybe we can promote active learning, problem solving, but if we are actually asking our students to do just a standard exercises on an assessment, then probably we are not activating deeper approach to learning. So in order to do so, we should be aware of this constructive alignment between learning outcomes and assessment, and that we produce assessment that can at least be not entirely valid, but we think about validity and how we can ensure validity. In that respect, what I'm going to promote, and that what we are using is learning design in a planning phase, and also after in an implementation phase, and learning analytics in the implementation and evaluation phase of our teaching and learning processes. So there are some assumptions that I hope that we can agree that they are true. First of all, that to develop sound student-central learning design, it is essential to ensure that assessment is constructively aligned with intended learning outcomes. So if you look at our courses, and then first of all, study program, and then to the courses, and we have some learning outcomes, I hope that we construct and define these learning outcomes carefully, then this constructive alignment should be done. And then it is crucial to the validity of the whole assessment program. So not just one test or one quiz or one problem that we are giving our students, but the whole assessment program on a course. And then that learning analytics can provide insights that help develop valid assessment programs. So what this presentation actually adds, first of all, that as not all learning outcomes are equally important, assessment program should reflect the prioritization of learning outcomes. That's what I'm going to present. Then the model of continuous improvement of learning design, which uses learning analytics to compare learning outcomes, are reflected in students' results in an assessment program and in the prioritization of learning outcomes. Further, learning analytics also include, in our case, clustering of students based on their assessment results and analysis of trace data from LMS in order to fine-tune support for students, to be as personalized as we can. But if, of course, we are aware, it depends on the group size, on support of number of teachers, so many other stuff, but still we should try to do that. And finally, that this approach can enable the development of databases of assessment tasks, recommendation systems, self-regulated learning, informed decision-making by teachers and by students. So first of all, when I talk about learning design, there are many definitions, but let me just briefly show you the elements that we consider that are important for the learning design. So first of all, what I mentioned before, a link between learning outcomes and content, structure, and timing. Then pedagogical strategies we are choosing. And of course, after that, sequence of teaching and learning activities, that it is in accordance with a pedagogical strategy, because if we choose flipped classroom, of course, we should provide our students with some pre-reading or some textbook material or something, some video to cover some basic notions, and after that ask them to, I don't know, fill in some simple quiz, but that our teaching and learning sessions together can be then devoted to active learning, collaboration, problem solving, and so on. Then type and frequency of assessment in the course. So it's not just summative assessment, but also formative assessment and feedback to students and technology we are using to support this kind of a learning. And all this, of course, influence students' workload. We should be aware of students' workload from the very start. Of course, and recently we've been discussing a lot about the mode of delivery, but of course, hybrid, blended, face-to-face, totally online, it's also part of the learning design. We are aware that learner group size influences very much some of the possibilities we can use. It is not the same to teach and assess students if we have 300 students or 30 students in a group. And finally, learning analytics can help us with all this. And what we developed learning design tool. You can find this learning design tool we developed on this address here. It's free to use, so you can choose to use it. Registration is very simple. You just go there and register, and you can use it on a web platform. So there is no need to download it, and you can add your collaborators there, your co-teachers, and you can design your whole course or study programs together. And I think it is important because in this tool, it is possible that, first of all, you can work with your co-teachers. Second, that there is no need for you to take care about the elements I mentioned before. So everything, it is planned, and you just go through it, choose from the menu, plan it, and finally you can of course export your learning design if you need something to be in some other places. So finally, I think that when you prepare your learning design, you can follow this learning design in your delivery phase, and of course after that to reuse it, change it, improve it year after year, or even during the same academic year. You can find some data here, something more about learning design. But what we are, this is just one picture, about the how we are planning, but I'm not going to explain how we are planning in this tool. But what is really important, that we can do all these and cover all these elements I prepared before and I mentioned before. And why this is important? Because if you have many courses, many students and different levels, different years, taking care about the learning design and then tracking the changes and collaboration, I think that's something that we can profit from using the tool. And now let me explain what kind of e-assessment we are using. I'm just giving you some overview of a few courses where we introduce the approach I mentioned before. So learning design first, and then learning analytics. And based on that, to evaluate assessment, e-assessment program. So there are the group of 10 of us, and this is one study program. We've been working as mathematicians, so it's IT study program. So we are teaching mathematics and several courses. Here you can see 4 of them, because all these 4 are on IT study program. And you can see that on undergraduate level, the group of students are quite big. So we are now using some hybrid mode of teaching. So it means that majority of our students are on campus, but at the same time they can follow and participate in teaching during the classes online as well. But before pandemics, it was just on campus possibility, but now we have this hybrid format. It's something we gained from this. And then we have, of course, formative and summative assessment, and these programs are quite similar because we have weekly e-quizzes during lectures or before lectures. These quizzes are automated in a way that we have a bank of assignments, and then students get individualized assignments, and then grading and feedback is also automated. Because if you look at the numbers of students, of course, it is we can profit from it, but also students can get some formative feedback, immediate feedback. But then we also have summative assessment, and this summative assessment is related to the learning outcomes. It means that on the first year, they are mainly standardized with the 3 monthly tests and then some essays and workshops and so on. But on the second year and the graduate study program, we have more problem solving with programming and working in teams and so on. So we try to actually to train our students to take a much more problem solving stuff year after year, and also to be independent learners at the end of the study program. But at the beginning, they need more support. And then what we try to do is to use kind of a frameworks for assessment programs. So we use this utility framework for assessment that it is actually prepared by Van der Vleuten many years ago. And why I really like this framework, it is because they have not just that we look at the assessment program by some standard from standard aspects like validity and reliability, but also that we should take care about the educational impact of assessment, acceptability of our assessment program by all stakeholders. So not just teachers, but also students, employers, management, and so on. And finally, which is of course important, it is cost of assessment, because we can design wonderful assessment program, but we should take care if we can deliver it based on the number of teachers we have, equipment, databases, programming power, so all sorts of other stuff. And what is really important, that a single assessment method can never be perfect for all the criteria, and assessment involves compromise. So if the assessment is highly valid and reliable, as I said, it can be that the cost of assessment is also very high. So we should have a kind of a balance. So our aim is to use learning design and learning analytics to support planning, monitoring, and evaluation of assessment program according to the utility framework. Here, I'm not going to talk about all the aspects of utility framework, mainly about validity and a little bit more about reliability of assessment program. When we talk about validity, there are tons of literature on validity, and there are many aspects of assessment validity. I'm just mentioning here a few of them. First of all, and probably the most important, is content validity. When we should think about the extent to which essential aspects of a domain are represented in assessment. So it means that we should really think about learning outcomes and link assessment with learning outcomes. Then it's criterion validity, how assessment scores are correlated with relevant external measures. So we developed also some approach that we weighted learning outcomes, and also that we are following during the implementation, and we are monitoring how students are performing in assessment program, relate that to the learning outcome weights. And construct validity, how what is actually assessed corresponds with what is intended to be assessed. And finally, consequential validity. So it's very close to the educational impact, so use of assessment and its consequences for teaching and learning. And then what we actually, and now I'm going to show you how we prepare our weights and validity framework. So assessment, finally, we can say in short that assessment has to be judged based on its purpose. So the whole assessment program should be linked assessment to the intended learning outcomes. And what we did, we also use analytic hierarchy process, so H&P, and analytic network process methods. So these are multi-criteria decision-making methods to select evaluation criteria to evaluate learning outcomes, and also to determine weights of evaluation criteria, and based on that, weights of learning outcomes. So it is a kind of a procedure and approach that give us also opportunity that we take into consideration the perspectives of different stakeholders. In our case, we just use teachers that are teaching on a subject, but on a course, but of course, we can ask alumni and management or study program directors, employers. Yeah, but in our case, we are just using 3 teachers for this process. And then, for example, I'll just give you a few examples. The example of discrete mathematics with graph theory. It is a course on a graduate level of IT program, software engineering study. So we have approximately 120 students, and these are criteria we use to evaluate the importance of learning outcomes. So on the right-hand side, you can see learning outcomes, 6 of them, and on the left-hand side, there are evaluation criteria. So process of coming to this evaluation criteria was also quite substantial, because it was a brainstorming, then talking about it, and finally we came with these 4 criteria, and based on these 4 criteria, we evaluated our learning outcomes. And what we get finally, we based on H&P group decision making, we got priorities. So you can see here that, for example, the highest priority for our course was effectively work in a team on problem posing and problem solving. So it means real problems related to graph theory and discrete mathematics. So it is not something that where we are covering some basic notions or theorems, but actually work in teams on a problem posing and problem solving. So if you look at the percentages, 25% or 1/4 of the whole course, according to this method, should go to this learning outcome. So we should really think about it, that our assessment methods and our approach is supporting students to achieve these learning outcomes. Of course, there are other learning outcomes that are also important, but you can see here that the priorities differ. And then what we get, we can then analyze the whole assessment program, not just taking into consideration the level of learning outcomes, but also the weights. The weights these weights come from the multi-criteria decision making I explained before. And then we look at our course in our e-assessment and try to figure out which task is related to which learning outcome. So we have, let's say, 3 monthly tests, altogether 30 problems, and we relate each problem to the learning outcomes. Then we have also a problem solving and problem posing stuff. So we also have to relate to the learning outcome. Quizzes as well. So it took time to relate it, to see if our actual assessment weights are in correspondence with the priorities of learning outcomes. Of course, we noticed that it was not ideal. And the reason for that was, of course, that during the pandemic, not all the activities that we had performed before the pandemic actually was, it was difficult to perform all these activities. And that's the reason we can see here the discrepancies between ideal and actual assessment weights. And it is the first result that was important to analyze, that this discrepancy means that what we are actually performing and what we are planning are not always very closely related. As you can see from this example, it was related, but not so closely as we wish. So it means that in the next year we can improve this, in some way. And then in the last column here, we can see the overall achievement of our students related to the learning outcomes. Of course, you can see that if the level of learning outcome is higher than we expect, and this is what happened, that the achievement level is lower. But there are also some much more refined results as well. And we can see here that different students have different results on this related to the learning outcomes. And what we did, we performed a cluster analysis based on the assessment results related to the learning outcomes. And then there were 3 clusters from the last year, the results. And we can see the clusters are such that the first cluster is that students with above average results in relation to all learning outcomes, and particularly outstanding in problem solving task. So these students are really good in applying, not just covering the theory, covering the standard assignments, but also having this possibility to transfer their knowledge into the practical arena. Unfortunately, there are a minority of them that are so good. Then we have below average students in relation to all learning outcomes, but also we have a cluster 3, the students that are above average in relation to most of the learning outcomes that are related to some standard stuff like standard exercises, definitions, and so on. And based on that, these are an analysis from learning analytics, from the trace data that can also give us a kind of information what students from the cluster 1 are using in LMS, how they are covering their material, what we can recommend for other students to work on to be much more successful related to the learning outcomes that have a higher level. And then, of course, we can make all sorts of other analysis. I'm not going to show it in more details. And this is what we did related to the validity. And let me now just in a few minutes cover reliability, because reliability, it is also important because it says extent to which an assessment methods measures consistently the performance of student. So it means that we can use some already existing reliability checks in LMS. For example, we are using Moodle, and here we can use coefficient of, for example, of internal consistency. It's actually Cronbach alpha, to see if our tests are reliable. Because if you have tests that are not reliable, then probably there is no point to check on and work just on validity. So they should go hand in hand. So fortunately, if you have e-assessment, then all these data are available in Moodle, so you can use some of this consistency measures. So the target is that this coefficient of internal consistency is at least above 70%. And what we try also to do to be better and better month after month when we use these checks, and also to build our databases with exercises that are valid, but also tests that are reliable. And what we try to do also to make some composite index on the level of the whole course, taking into consideration the whole program to see if the whole assessment program is reliable. And it means that this index is above 70%. But what really helps, that majority of LMSs do have this some kind of indices we can, and statistics we can use. But of course, it is not the only. It is not, if you are just using these indices without looking at the whole program and other aspects, that is not something that is useful. It's just one, let's say, one brick in this wall that we are building, and that we should take care about it, but it is not the most important one. So then we can see what are our ideal tasks, ideal exercises we can use year after year. For example, it is one from the mathematics one. So, for example, when we have a possibility to use R or Python to program and produce a lot of very similar tasks, this is in Croatian, I'm sorry, but it is how we are working out exercise database. And then you can see that these tasks are not just tasks that are very straightforward or just filling in our e-assessment formula, just one data or one number or something like that. They should think about it. And because we have hundreds of very similar tasks, they can use it to exercise as well. And then this is another one, and so on. And finally, if you look at, for example, one monthly test, for if you have 120 students, and there are, for example, eight tasks for each student, and we have our database structured in a way that we have, the tasks, assessment tasks and exercises are classified in a matrix, like on the level. So there are different level of difficulty, but also different topics that we are going to cover. For example, here for this monthly test, if we have graph coloring, there were 625 different but very similar exercises. So it means that each student gets one out of this 625 and so on for all these exercises. So it means that this each student really has her or his own test. It's not something that they can copy and share easily in that way. And then, so it is, when you look at all this, what I explained so far, so it is validity, mainly based on learning outcomes, then reliability based on some data we can look and take out of the LMS. But finally, it is upon teacher as well to have a good balance of a routine task and complex task in a test. And it is really easy when you have e-assessment, because you can store very good exercises, build more with some programming, and have year by year more and more exercises you can use for formative, but also a summative assessment. What is this routine task can be programmed, so it's not such an complex work to do, but having a relevant problem-solving task, it needs time, and usually it's built one by one without programming. So finally, some practical implications for mathematics in e-assessment. So what we proposed, that learning analytics can provide important insights for the development or improvement of learning design. So year by year, you can make your learning design better, and part of the learning design is, of course, assessment. Secondly, that learning analytics can also contribute to the development of databases of assessment tasks aligned with the learning outcomes, with ensured validity and reliability. And this can also support sharing and reusing. So we share our tasks among ourselves, but also at the level of the faculty, not further for now. But it is possibility for even more reusing and sharing. Then if you have some other techniques like clustering, it can help you as a teacher to have a tailored education and interventions. And recommendation system for students to help them not just to cover all the learning outcomes, but to become self-regulated, independent learner. So thank you very much. I hope that I succeed to explain some of the approaches we are using in our work especially related to the validity of e-assessment. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Blaženka. So yeah, if you'd like to pop any questions in the link in the Moodle site there, Christian's posted the link in the chat, so you can head over there, add your questions. While I'm waiting for anyone. Oh, I've got one. Excellent. Okay, so Christian asks via the Moodle Q&A, if the tool identifies that some assessments are not reliable, what does he do in response to that? Yeah, I think that if it happened, but so it's not a tragedy. It just means that next time you should you should analyze why your assessment is not reliable and see what's the reason for that. For example, reason can be that you on purpose built very diverse quiz to help students to have some feedback without, taking care about reliability. That's fine. But if you are testing new exercises to put into the databases for future use, then you should think about it. What does it mean that your assessment is not reliable, and how to make it better? But it is not only the reliability that we should take care about it. For example, if you look at the when we started, then we when you look at the reliability, we were aware from the very beginning that it's not the only the only important aspect of our assessment. But it would be really bad if your reliability is below, I don't know, 50. It means that you are just picking something out of nowhere, some exercises, and give your students. And the problem is, if you have a small group, then of course the reliability measured based on Cronbach alpha are not so, let's say, accurate. But it depends on the purpose again. So that's the reason I like this van der Vleuten utility framework, when you have not just validity or just reliability, but also other aspects. As I mentioned before, if you are building just formative assessment, then the main purpose is to give feedback to students. So it's not a big deal if it is not completely reliable. But if it is not valid, it's a problem, because then you should ask yourself, what's the purpose of formative assessment, giving feedback to students on learning outcomes that are not the part of your program. Thank you, Blaženka. Question here from Gareth Walker. How have you approached displaying some of this data to students? So they'll often want to know not just how they're performing individually, but also in relation to others. What are your thoughts on the balance between transparency, individual data? Yeah, it is a great question. Yeah, they always can see the results of the whole cohort. So what are the the approximate results? How well they are performed on a certain assignment, questions, and so on. And I'm using my time in lecturing to explain it, to give them some information. But then they can do on themselves to compare their results to the group results. So I'm not, I'm not using this comparison between individual students with the cohort at all, and on lecturing, but also I try to avoid to use it even when I talk to students. I've tried, particular students, I've tried to instruct the student to look to the data by herself, himself, because they are grown-ups, even though they are young, majority of them, but yeah, I think that we should give them information and give them tools how to analyze the data they can get. So this data literacy is very important, and also assessment literacy for students and for teachers.
but not to be, let's say, over, not to be big brother for them. So to give them tools, to give them instructions, to recommend something, but not to be big brother for our students, because I think that can be really with a contra effect for them.
Thank you, Blaženka, and thank you, Gareth, for the question. Can I ask a quick follow-up, if that's okay? Blaženka, do you have plans that the learning design tool and analytics tool that you show there, do you have any plans to link that to LMS systems?
Yeah, that's Chris, that's great. First of all, I would really recommend all of you to use these tools. It's learning-design.eu, and it's easy to use. And what you get at the end, you get the whole plan and also learning analytics at the end. So you can analyze. How many activities, this and that, how many assessment, if your learning outcomes are covered 100% and so on. So you can do it during the planning phase. And I really recommend you to look at it. And but it's not possible right now to link it directly to the LMS. Our plan is, and we apply for a project to at least scaffold it, the LMS directly from the learning design. So for example, to link learning design tool and LMS Moodle, and at the end that you can get at least recommendations in LMS directly, what kind of activities and what kind of tools to use, but it is not available right now. But yeah, it is, and also the plan is to prepare some other stuff, but right now we've been doing that mainly on our own with the support of 2 European projects. One is Rapid, another is eDesk 3, and also Teach for Edu. But it is a kind of a co-design that really takes time, and we are doing that on our spare time.
Thank you, Blaženka. Okay, so a question from Claire Lines about large cohorts, something that a lot of us suffer from, I think. So Claire asks, for the large cohort, you refer to 3 monthly exams, eBank. Are those assessments automatically marked? And if they are you happy marking final entry values, or are you giving method marks? How many members of staff do you have involved on courses of that size, and how much contact time?
Yeah, so there are 3 monthly tests plus, but it's not the only. These are 3 tests plus problem solving work. So it means working on project, and they also can also quizzes are contributing to the final mark as well. Quizzes are automatically, assessed, and then feedback is immediate. For the monthly tests, we have the most of our exercises are automatically graded. So the majority of work, it is in a preparation phase, when you should really prepare these big databases with exercises. But when we construct a good, let's say, exercise, then we need, and fortunately we have a few good programmers in our team. There are 10 of us that can make, to program it in R or in Python to produce more similar examples, hundreds of similar examples. For example, if you change the parameter or some other conditions, then they can produce more. So these exercises again are then marked directly from the system, automated. But we also try to have at least one exercise in each monthly test that are going to be read and marked by hand because we think it is very important that they also perform something step by step, mathematically correct. They can use different tools, but they always should supply, so upload in the system notes with their, working out the exercises and so on. So at least one of these examples are marked by hand, but by teachers directly. And of course, this problem posing and problem solving exercises are always teacher giving feedback and marks. Of course, we construct rubrics with levels and to help teachers to be this inter-rater reliability to be higher.
Okay, thank you. There's at least one more question in the on the Moodle site there, but I think we should wrap this up. So we can continue the questions and conversation there. So I'd just like to thank you, Blaženka, again for a great talk.